you know me. Everybody say that they know me, they only see me on the cover of a Vogue and they clone me. We cannot be friends because I like being lonely. I'm a boss.
Okay, so Maria Daniels here with Successfully Chaotic, and today I have RD Weeks here as a special guest. He is the host of Outdoor Running Podcast, and I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself and tell you all a little bit about what he does.
Yeah, well, thank you, Maria, too, for allowing me to be on this podcast. It's definitely an honor, so I appreciate it. And for my story, I want to share my running journey. And so that began in 2018 when I first did my first long-distance race, which was a half marathon. And for me, a reason to get into that was like wanting to focus on fitness. Like I had done races in the past, or not races, but sports in the past, and wanted to kind of bring that back in. And so I went through that process through training, which was just a whirlwind of trying to figure it out, to then going and actually completing the race. And I'm thankful to have completed it. But at the end, I just collapsed. But during, I was just feeling like so like on fire, ready to go. I was like, anything is possible. Afterwards, I felt like just complete garbage. Like it was a collapse. Was like, I'm done. And so that caused me to take a break from running. And ultimately at that point, this is, about 2019, this is when I also, on the business side, I'd been an entrepreneur now. I've been one for about a little over 6 years. And at that point, one of my events business collapsed at the end of going into 2019. And this was a moment for me of just really feeling just in this like cave that I'm sure others, listening can relate to this moment of like, all right, how do I, like, what does this all mean?
Yeah.
That anxiety starts to build, the fear of life, like all of a sudden just resentment starts to form and you're just feeling like this sucks.
Yeah.
And the depression too can really build. And so that lasted for me a whole of 2019. I was doing, odd jobs here and there still in the entrepreneurial world. But I was trying to figure out like, okay, I needed to make a change. And that really happened at the start of, 2020 where I was like, well, what can I do to really shift out of this energy? Like I was thinking back to childhood and thinking back to these moments of just like how much fun life was. Like I had a great childhood. And so like I was thinking about that. Then I started thinking more about this race, the half marathon I did. And I was like, oh man, that was so awesome. And like I felt good from a fitness level and overall well-being. So I decided in my goals, I wrote out, hey, I want to do a 50K race. And at that point, I had no idea what that meant, like how many mileage that was. It was just like, that sounds
like
cool.
a big number. This is a good number.
Yeah. I was like, I just saw that somewhere. I was like, 50K sounds cool. Like that just like seems like something that like really brings some energy. And what it caused for me was a shift of like, hey, like what could that be about? Like that's pretty cool. And so I was like, well, how do I even do that? Like, how do I go about that process? So I was like, all right, I've been sitting on this couch. I've been inside. I'm an introvert at heart. And I'm like, man, like I want to, this is not good for me. And so I decided there and then to stand up and just go outside and walk. Just walk. Didn't have a timeline on it, but I just went out the front door. Also at that time I was living by myself, and so I was just like, let me just go out there and I watched for a little bit. And as I was walking, something was further beginning to shift, where it was like, wow, like this feels awesome. Like this feels amazing. I'm starting to feel that energy back of where I was on the race day, and just, also that fun of life and the enjoyment and like actually like really, having a great time. And so I started to build upon that. It was like a small win, small goal. I was like, done. Let me go. Like, let me see what other, the self-confidence was starting to come back a little bit. And so started to do that daily. And then all of a sudden, I was like, all right, well, I got to start running now. So I had this 50K, like it's a run. So that's where then I started to run, get back into running. And now the goal from just being able to be curious about it, it's gone into now a 50K race in each of the U.S. states. With COVID-19, some of the plans had to be scrapped. So the plan was to do it starting to do it in 2021, and then be able to do it in 2 years, 2023, to finish all those races. And so it's going to be, self-supported, but just being able to feed off of that energy has been amazing in other areas of my life too, when it comes to business, comes to just relationships and overall well-being and how I feel about myself. I attribute to just being able to get outdoors and taking action and being active outdoors. And so that is my journey thus far. And it's been a whirlwind. I'm excited to continue on that journey too.
I love that. I love that you, well, not only were super real, like you said that you had company crashed in 2019. I mean, you had a lot of stuff go on. And I think it's funny because I've talked to so many people on here that 2018 and 19 were terrible years for them. They were terrible years for me. They were terrible years for me, probably the worst years for me. But in retrospect, they were kind of refining me. They were pulling back the parts of me that of my own personal self didn't fit, and of my professional life honestly didn't fit. And I didn't see it at the time. And I think sometimes you mentioned the word shift. I think when we're in the middle of that shift, you know, it can be painful and it can be confusing and it can be, you know, so many emotions. But, you know, when you get out on the other side and you look back, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. I get why that was happening. But when you're in the middle of it, you're just, you know, you're just trying to survive it, you know. And another thing you mentioned is that you said you're an introvert at heart. I think that's so funny because I always say I'm an extroverted introvert because, you know, whenever I'm out and I'm about, I can be extroverted, you know, I can, you know, talk, I love people, but at the same time, it takes all of my energy to be that person. And so then I just kind of recluse. And if I'm going through something tough, I'm definitely recluse. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to like process. And that was how I was, you know, when I went through all this stuff, I just wanted to kind of like be by myself and I was barely going through just the motions. But I think sometimes that can be important, you know, to be able to allow us to kind of stop and pause and reflect. And I've been calling 2020 the great pause because even people that maybe they haven't necessarily been through, you know, the shift yet, like we have. I was already kind of pre-prepared for 2020 just because of all the stuff I went through, you know, 2018 and 19. It was just kind of like, okay, well, this just kind of gives me longer to plan and stuff. So it really didn't affect me like it did, I think, some other people because of that, because I had already went through my own reflection and was already kind of being a little bit more purposeful about my actions. So, you know, I like that you found an outlet that you said, okay, I'm not sure what the shift is for yet. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do or be when I grow up yet. You know, I always use that term, even though I'm like 40, you know, I'm like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, because I think we come to this conclusion that we have to just be this one thing, but I think it could be fluid. You know, we change as we go through life. And I think that's fine, but being able to find that outlet, and yours was running, mine is definitely not running. You know, I always joke around and say that if you see me running, you need to run too, because there's something chasing me. That's not my jam. I love hiking and kayaking, all active things except running. But I have a lot of friends that do run, and I admire them for that because it does take so much dedication. But the idea is to pick something that you love. You know, for me, running wouldn't be a great outlet because I'm going to hate every second of it. But for somebody that loves it, you know, it's that outlet. And if you've never tried it, try it. Just the idea of, like you said, getting outdoors. You start out walking. You're just like, you know what? I don't know. I'm just going to go out, and today I'm just walking. Small, bite-sized, small wins, like you said, small wins, because that will help propel you to the next thing. Yeah, you might not have life figured out after that first walk, but you're going to have the endorphins flowing from that first walk. You're going to get outside and breathe some fresh air, and you're going to at least have that moment figured out. Yeah, so I love that.
Yeah, and to go off of that too, like what's important is absolutely, you know, being able to get outdoors. I mean, now it's difficult depending, you know, where you are. It can be difficult sometimes to get outdoors, but just being able to set some time aside to do that can be so powerful for the shift. With technology, it continues to grow and grow, and there's importance to find your balance within that. And I think the outdoors can be a great outlet for those, especially, you know, in a business where you're having maybe to sit down X amount of times, or you're on the phone, or you're communicating. Like being able to just have that time to get outdoors, and maybe it's just your own me time, can be so powerful to allow you to recharge and also reconnect with yourself of like, all right, where do I have to go to accomplish today to make sure that it's going to be a great day?
I like that. And I think so many entrepreneurs, especially ones that I talk to and I deal with, they've got this idea that I've even had people say this, well, you wouldn't get it because you got it all figured out. Well, this was before my show and I started like airing all my dirty laundry. But, you know, they thought because, you know, I did this and it turned out good, and I did this and it turned out good, that I had it all figured out. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not how that works. You know, they didn't see the 500 times I tried something. I was like, well, that didn't work. You know, that's because that is the entrepreneurship journey. The entrepreneurship journey is messy, and sometimes it's ugly, and sometimes it's fabulous. And, you know, you go through this roller coaster of emotions. And I think so many entrepreneurs have this idea that if they hit kind of a roadblock, then they failed. And, you know, that's not it. You mentioned that, you know, you had been an event planner, and that you were dealing with, you know, large conferences, and that business failed. And I think sometimes people hear that word fail and it's just got this negative connotation to it. And it used to for me too. But really, the way that I look at it is like, okay, well, I'm done with that chapter. It's like finishing the chapter of a book. If you're reading a book, you finish that chapter. It's like, okay, well, on to the next chapter. Because if you have that mindset of it's failure, it's over, the end, and you're all dramatic about it, that's not going to be a healthy place to stay. Now, it is important to feel those emotions. If you're sad at that moment, if you're, disappointed at that moment, great, feel that, be disappointed, be sad, be whatever those emotions are for that moment. I'm never, going to say, don't feel your emotions. You have to feel those emotions for that moment, but you don't want to stay there, because you are going to stop yourself from seeing what's next, what's in the next chapter. Yeah. And so we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, well, and what's important, so I felt the same way, where it was like, oh, I can't tell people that I failed. Like, it feels like, oh, what are other people going to think about me? And, give context to that. So on this journey, first and foremost, I think it's important to have, strategies and tactics, to be able to move, through those moments. And so that is absolutely looking at others that deal perhaps in a certain area that you're seeking support in. If it's how do you overcome fear or overcome, self-doubt, finding, like, I think personal development is something that everyone should absolutely take the time to do each and every day. And, it's sometimes like, I have those moments like, oh, wow, like people don't realize, like don't know about it. And so going back into that though, for a framework, one that I use, and that hopefully, might be helpful for others, is this idea of first committing, like it's a 3 C's, and so it's like you're committing to what it is you want to do in the standpoint of how you feel. Like there's on the, so I'll first say it all the way through. So it's commitment, confidence, and clarity. And it's a little opposite of what's talked about, where it's like, you have to have it all figured out before you get started. And I think it definitely comes where it's, the two come together, where it's almost like a dance between all 3 of those, where it's like the clarity and commitment, you need to have that flowing, where you're first committing to just how you want to feel emotionally. I think that's really important, is to understand, okay, I'm not feeling so great. If it's in my business, in my relationships, in my life, I want to feel what? Like, what do you want to feel? And being able to get into that emotional state as human beings, that's such a big part of us. And so if we can really dive into what that is, then we're going to commit to that feeling. And from there, that's where then the tactics and strategy comes into play of like, all right, let me commit through small wins, like small goals that can get me towards that emotion. And that's, if it's learning from others of what they're doing, and implementing that within my own life, to, creating, like, I know I have to do this to feel that way. Like, let me do that and see how it goes. And then from there, the self-confidence just builds up, where then it's like you go through that process of commitment, then the confidence builds to the clarity. And then you look at that small goal, and then you just continue the cycle back. You say, all right, let me tweak this here or there, and let me start back to committing to this or that. And I think that can just be so powerful to realize, you got to, figure out what that strategy or tactics are going to be, but just implement it and take action. That is, like, sometimes we're on the sidelines, like me and you, we can connect on the personal development side, is like mostly, and I've been on like that, is like, oh, I'm on the sidelines, but I'm not actually taking action and committing full out into being a part of that to really understand where the clarity is. Because if not, I just think about it for years to come, and all of a sudden nothing happens.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned fear. I think fear of failure, fear of what people are going to think if you fail, fear, just fear can keep us paralyzed and on the sidelines. And I think that if we go ahead and you mentioned commit to the emotions, I love that, because I think what ends up happening is people don't think about the emotional connection when they're going into something. They think about it when they're getting out of it, but they don't think about it going into it. And I think that if, you could kind of stop and pause and reflect about, why are you wanting to do this? What is the emotional connection to this? Because sometimes I think there are these straw man goals. I always say these straw man goals because they're goals that we think we're supposed to have, and we don't really know why we're supposed to have them. But, I'll work with somebody on coaching, and I'll say, well, why do you want to do this? Well, I just want to be successful. Okay. Well, great. What does successful mean to you? Well, I want to be able to have, I want to be able to have money, or I want to be able to have freedom. I want to be able, whatever, fill in the blank. But it ends up being these just straw man goals that we're just kind of parroting because we think we're supposed to, Yeah. Did you feel that?
Yeah, no, 100%. So like, I appreciate you sharing that, because it's like so true, where I was like going through these, and that's where the businesses were coming into play, was like, I went from, this idea of like, oh, I want to have a big business. And then I'm realizing, like, why do I want to have that? Like, like, wait, maybe I don't want to have to manage like 1,000 people. And it doesn't mean like maybe in the future I will want to do that, but it's just like now, here and now in this moment, I think it's important to to just, take it in small chunks of time in your life of like, okay, well, what do I want to be in like these next few years or even this year? Like, who do I want to be? And for me, I was like, oh, I want to just be able, I have this goal now in these next 2 years to get dedicated to running and see what that results into. And like, I'm able to cover my costs. I'm able to feel like alive. And so it's just, if I didn't have that awareness, I'd still be on this other path of like, oh, I got to go into this other business. I'm feeling miserable. Like it sucks. And I'm going through the grind, and
Absolutely.
There are going to be those moments, but then like realizing when a change has to happen where you just feel like, oh, I don't feel called to do this anymore. And then realizing, oh yeah, that's going to be okay to do. Like you can shift that and change it. But then that's where then all those outside emotions come into play of like, oh my gosh, I'm letting these people down. I'm like feeling, just like, what are people going to think? If I have to backtrack or I feel like I'm backtracking, what's my family going to think? But in the end, like a key to focus in on is one, being able to come from a place like, do you feel good about the journey you're on? Do you feel great? Do you feel like happiness, excitement? And it's a loaded question in the standpoint of what does that mean to you? Like there's so many different interpretations, but I try to lean into that of just being able to continuously reflect each and every day and know, hey, is this like, take a step back every day and realize, is this the path that I want to go down? If not, what change do I need to make and actually take action and commit to that too?
I like that. And being able to reflect allows us to not react. I know so many of my mistakes that I made in my business is because I was reacting.
Mm-hmm.
I was reacting to that moment. I was reacting to the decision, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or stuff not moving as fast. And so I would panic and I would react instead of just stopping and pausing, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's also for me what would happen. And I still, and that's the thing is like, it's still work in progress. Like it's going to be, always. Always. You're going to have it's not like, oh, now and we talked about it before getting on here. Yeah. It's like, just because you get to a certain level doesn't mean you don't have any problems. Like you're always going to have them. It's just what can be really powerful is how to shorten that too, where you're not getting burnout and years go by, but you're shortening that time frame where you're just feeling, okay, honoring it, taking it in, but not letting it paralyze you in the standpoint of action taking. And so for me, I would always get those moments of like the head buzz, the buzzing going on in my head of like, oh my gosh, I got to do this. You start feeling really hot, and then the stomach starts churning and you have these knots. And for me, that happens. And then in that place, I make these decisions that ultimately I look back on, I'm like, why did I make those decisions? Yep. And it's not taking the time to like step back and pause, metaphorically, step back and pause and realize like, okay, is this really going to be the path I'm going? And that can take 30 seconds. It's not like when people think about like stepping back and pausing, it's going to take half a day.
Yeah,
it could be just that 30 seconds of like, all right, let me breathe, let me reflect, and let me see what's going on here in the situation.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I know for me, I kind of look back on some of my reactions that I had, and they were definitely panic. They were definitely. I thought at that moment, it felt like such a big problem. And I had to make this decision right now. Like you said, your head would be buzzing. And I would feel the same way. I have to do it. And I look back and I'm like, wow, okay, it really wasn't that big of a deal. It was not as detrimental as I was making it. I could have taken the 30 seconds. Technically, I could have taken 30 days on a lot of these decisions, and it wouldn't have actually changed anything, because I think we flip out about these things, even when they're not a needle moving decision, even when they're not going to make us go belly up. And it's funny because back to, last year definitely helped me with perspective and reflecting and deciding on how I wanted not only my business to be and how I wanted to serve my clients, but how I wanted my life to be, because I'm only working 2 days a week right now. And that works for me. I was working 5 to 7 days a week, freaking out, trying to balance the kids and then running here to the building where I'm at now and trying to work in the middle of the night. And it's funny because I'm not making less money than I was making then. But I had all these things on my to-do list that I put there that really didn't need to be done. It could have gone on when I have time, I could spend an hour here or there. But, I would give myself these like unrealistic lists and these unrealistic goals that I gave myself with no real reason. And I was driving myself crazy with it.
Yeah. Oh my God. And absolutely can relate to that. So I appreciate you sharing that, because, that for me, what comes up with that, as you shared, was comparing myself to others. So I still do that, a little bit here and there, and I have to catch myself. But it's like, that's somewhere where I want to be. so all of a sudden now become stressed on the path that I'm on, even though I'm growing and I'm making that progress. But then I'm like, oh, I gotta be at this certain level. Like, why am I not there yet? And it's that patience too. It's powerful. But also too, what was coming up as well was this importance of like, especially for those that are, listening and saying, hey, like, all right, well, I can't make a change. Like this is the way, this is what I got going on. If it's a family, if it's kids, if it's business, all of this. And what's important is just realizing how much you're focusing in on the time usage of where you're putting your time first.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to reflection. Reflection is so key. For me, I journal. That's the best way I do it, where I put intention each and every day. And again, this takes 7 to 5 minutes now that I've timed it. But it can be as simple as like mapping out what that day is going to look like. Where's my time? And each day, kind of observing, I call it the circle of time, where you put these categories, you put your time. Someone may be like, that's too complicated. Hey, it takes like 3 minutes. Draw a little circle.
Do what works
put your time.
for you.
And do what works for us. And the thing is, though, is just being able to be creative in the problems that you're looking at, being able to just take that time to shift your perspective and not go through the hamster wheel and just realize, is there something that I can do that can absolutely, one, make me almost jump 5 steps in this new direction that I've wanted to go for so long, but I just haven't taken the time to actually reflect on that. And it can be difficult. Like there can be someone that's like, hey, I don't have the time. And that's where, again, being able to just audit it and just really make, determine if that is the case. And then knowing what could go, what could be cut in the sense of cut off that could allow you to have a little bit more time. But it goes back to just taking those moments to reflect.
I agree. And I know time management was one of those things that I struggled with so bad. But part of that was because, again, I was making this to-do list that not one person could actually get done in an entire day. So, I mean, I think it's important to look at your list and ask yourself for each of those things, are these really things that I need to get done? Are these going to move my business forward, move my life forward, or are they just things that these would be great to go to the next step for growth or for more clarity or for better social media management, whatever it may be, whatever. But I have a notebook that I carry around that my brain dump notebook, because my brain constantly is coming up with, oh, this would be this is a great idea, and I'll put it down in there. But I used to actually, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to do this tomorrow, and I put it on my calendar, and I'd spend half a day or a day coming up with this new concept idea because my brain wouldn't stop on it. And then I would get to the end and be like, it's not going to work. So what did I do? I just wasted an entire day. Just wasted an entire day instead of putting it in my notebook. And then, I'll have time where I actually schedule in 30 minutes or whatever to go through my notebook. And I'll go through my notebook. And it's actually funny when I reflect in my notebook, I look at it like, I don't know what I was thinking. That was the stupidest idea I've ever had in my entire life. I rip that sucker out, throw it away because it doesn't even stay there. And then I'm like, okay, that's pretty good, and I'll leave it in there, go to the next page. I just kind of go through them, and that gets it out of my head. So I removed it from my head, spent 30 seconds writing it down. It goes in my notebook. I have that scheduled once a week. Usually I do it on a weekend where I'm just kind of sitting with the kids and just kind of look through it, schedule it to look through it, tear out the crap that doesn't belong in my notebook anymore and throw it away. It's out of my head, out of my notebook. And the stuff that stays in there, I look at every week, and a lot of them end up staying there, and they become real ideas that are tabled to be reflected on more later. But that has helped me so much, because I shared before we went on air, and I've shared this on a couple of podcast episodes, that I found out that, one that I found out, I kind of knew that I was a visionary, it just kind of gave me a name to go with the fact that my brain doesn't stop thinking of ideas. So it almost, instead of me thinking of it as a negative, it gave me permission to dream those things. Because before I thought, oh, okay, well, I just can't, you hear people say, well, you're just a dreamer, she's a dreamer, just, get your head out of the clouds. And because I've always been that way, it's just been the way I always have been. And I looked at it as a negative thing because it's considered a negative thing in a lot of ways, but to be able to have that name to it really helped me a lot. And I got it from the Rocket Fuel book and took the Rocket Fuel quiz online. And I was like, okay, well, that gave me permission to be that dreamer, to be that visionary, but I still needed to be able to implement it in a way that I could not just sit around and dream ideas and waste a lot of time. So, going back to what you were talking about, time management and all that, for me, I removed the need for mega time management by removing a lot of the stuff that I was spending time on, because I was looking at it and reflecting, does this fit? And I would literally ask myself out loud, like a crazy person, does this fit? Why am I doing this? What is this going to make me money? Is this, serving my clients? Is this going to, improve my business immediately today? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does this actually fit? Because, and I say this a lot, that every time that we're doing something, whether we're working a 9 to 5 or we're working our own business or whatever, we're literally selling hours of our life, like literally selling it, so when you think about it like that, it's a whole lot easier to say no to things than it is if you don't think about it like that. Because for me, I'd be like, oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I can totally do that, or take this client or take that. But, when you think about it like, well, I'm selling, the next 30 hours of my life to this client I just signed on, is it worth it for that? I don't know, you have to, it really helps you to come up with your time management things if you really think and reflect on each single thing. Is that something that you find is helpful?
Yeah. So for me, I have 3 journals. So it might not be for everyone, but how I do it is I have my daily just task journal where I map out the time. I write down 3, and it goes back to the goals for the day. So I have 3 goals for the day, and that went from a list to-do list of, as you said, like 20 to 30. Like I'd have that to-do list, and I've condensed it now to just 3 things. Like what are going to be those 3 things, as you talked about with the needle mover, that are going to move it, and I'm going to feel great about it. And I'm going to feel like these are awesome accomplishing wins that I can just scratch out. Any additional time after that, great. It's like just like on top of what I just did. Like that's all extra. And so what are those 3 things that are just going to make me seem like this is going to be a successful day? Because that allows for the momentum to build. And so I have that for one journal. Other one is just a journal in itself, from a traditional sense of like just like a diary, where it's like going through what happened in the day. And then the third one is just, as the brain dump for ideas and getting that out there. Also taking notes in meetings. That one, I think, as you talked about too, is so important to highlight, is like when you get out of your head with these ideas and put them on paper, one, they become smaller in a sense. It may be a massive goal, but your mind will always try to just amplify that. If you don't allow it to be put on paper and just look at it and say, is this something that's going to serve me or not? And it goes back to like anything we do, and no matter how complicated we make it in our own lives, it goes back to how does it, serve us in an emotional way, as a feelings way. Like all of it ties back to, we're humans. We have a massive emotional response to what's occurring in our lives. And we just got to look at it in that lens of like, is it, in the sense, is it going to serve me in the standpoint of like the happiness I have of serving someone else, from a client standpoint, from helping others and getting into that mindset. I think that's so important anyway. That's definitely a big value of mine, but it just goes back to like, it's all going to come flowing through us. And so if we can realize, as you said, and understand, where can I say no? And realizing like, it's nothing personal. It's just putting those boundaries. And I think sometimes we feel we need to, from an emotional standpoint, emotionally serve others when we're not even serving ourselves too. And it doesn't have to be in a malicious way. I mean, sometimes it goes to those extremes, but it's being able to just set those boundaries where it's realizing where am I saying yes to and where am I saying no to? Because again, time, it's so important, and it's being able to honor that for everyone. And I mean, I think that goes back to the importance of it from a service mindset, is like, can I serve this person? If let's say for the business, it's looking at the clients, it's like, can I really be 100% service mindset where I'm going to give them all of my energy, or is it also draining me? And in a sense, from a lifeguard standpoint, I can't save that person or their business or what they're doing because I don't have the skill set or the emotional wherewithal to handle that. And that's where you realize it's a no, and you honor that because it's going to serve both people in that situation, or both organizations, or however it is for someone's business. And I think that's really important to take that into consideration, because as businesses in general, it's like, okay, bottom line, we got to think about that, but also it's important to realize, is there a way to really improve upon that? We're still honoring that bottom line, but ultimately too, you're bringing new energy to everyone on the team, yourself, and you're actually going to not burn out from it.
Absolutely. And I think that was one of my biggest lessons. I've had a lot, and I mean, I literally write a novel of my lessons that I learned, but one of them was the ability to say no, because if you dig back to the core of every single thing that I've ever done and all the things that I still do, at the very core of it, I'm a helper. I'm definitely an empath. I didn't even know that term for the longest time, but I'm definitely an empath, and I really feel for other people, and I want to help them. I genuinely want to help them. But for the longest time, I was helping them at my own expense. And, I don't know if you've ever, there's a book out there called The Sin Eater. And I don't know if you've ever read that, but it was a very interesting book when I read it. And I can't even remember, it's been years ago, but there was this sin eater that was in this village. And if anybody had sins that they needed, to be removed from them, they would go to the sin eater, and the sin eater would remove the sins for that person. And they would walk away. They would feel great. And the sin eater just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And when I read that book, it was kind of like, wow, I feel like the sin eater, because people would come to me with their problems. And it's not that I didn't want to help, I did, but there was so much of it. And I had the inability to say no. I did not have great boundaries because I mean, not to kind of toot my own horn on it, but I was great at helping them with their problems. I was, I could kind of see what they needed to do, even though I couldn't even see what I needed to do with my own life. I could see what they needed to do and help guide them through it. But at the same time, my own life was falling apart, and I just felt that pressure, and I felt like the sin eater. I felt like I was taking and removing that pain and struggle from them and just putting it on myself. And I was feeling just weaker and weaker and weaker until I just couldn't do it anymore, and I completely had a complete burnout, and I talk about this on the show, that complete panic attack, anxiety attack, however you want to term it. And I didn't even know that feeling existed. I had never had to that extent, and it was terrifying, and it was a big awakening. But I think that we need to realize that, we talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about, struggles, we talk about triumphs, and we talk about, goals and all these things we need to do. But when we dig back, you've mentioned emotions a lot. Emotions are the driving force for the human race on every single thing that we do, and, being in the social media, consulting world, this 100%, and I've been in social media and marketing and such, emotions drive sales, emotions drive decisions, emotions drive everything. People make the decisions on what they're going to do and what they want to do based on emotions. It makes them happy, or, they want to feel great because they did this, or, whatever it is. So, I think we don't think about the emotions when we are taking steps in our own business a lot of times until we don't have another choice. And, that's kind of one of the things that I try to preach a lot on the show, is because, I was in that burnout. I was in that complete burnout, and I never want anybody to get to that point again.
Yes, and what I'll say from that too that came up was also this idea of like being willing, and we talked about it before, and it's important to reiterate it, is having that check-in with yourself each day. Like It's you, you're a human being, you're doing these actions. Make sure you're checking in with yourself each and every day. And whatever that looks like, there's different ways to do that. If it's, meditation, if it's prayer, if it's just journaling, if it's, quickly getting outside for your own time by yourself, but and again, it does not have to be long. It can be, less than 5 minutes, but having a check-in and just knowing, hey, am I enjoying this? Do I feel like this is the path I want to go down? And It is so hard to do that too at times, like especially with, there's a lot of external sides, responsibilities, all these come into flow where you're thinking about that, but just try as best you can. And, there's different methods to do that, but you got to clear that out and just look at yourself and say, is this the path I want to go down? And if not, if you don't feel 100% into it, realize why that is, and then try to lean into that and determine if you can go down another path too.
Absolutely. And I think, kind of that brings up to something we kind of talked about before we went on air, is just the idea that, sometimes it's okay to quit. Sometimes it is. We talk about, grind and hustle and, hashtag grind, hashtag hustle. And, these are all terms we all use, especially in the entrepreneur or business ownership world. And it's not that they're bad inherently, but sometimes that grind is not for what you're grinding on. That hustle is not for what you're hustling on. Maybe that's not the path you're supposed to be on. So sometimes it's okay to stop and say, is this for me? Is this what makes me happy? Because sometimes we're grinding and we're hustling, we're just going through the motions, but it's draining us.
Yes. And one part too that came up as you were just talking about it too is like the context of it all, like being able to realize like that served a purpose for a reason. It's to get me off the couch to go outside for me. It got me out there. But then realizing, all right, there's gonna be something else, got me to this point, but there's gotta be something else now to get me to the next point in life. And knowing that and realizing if it's not serving me, switch it up real quick. Because if not, that's gonna lead down the road of just, that burnout. I experienced that. Like I knew, hey, that was the time to quit. I did it. I took that. And then even now, and something that we talked about before getting on here was like, now currently, I'm 28 years old and I'm back with my parents. I decided from a practical standpoint, I knew I was going to be more happy from budgeting. I have a good relationship with them. Let me move back in with them for the remainder of the year with COVID-19 situation from Charleston now up to Maryland. And I'm preparing, I know in my mind, and I'm going to share that here too, for those, like in my mind, I'm going and going to be doing what I'm doing come January. But I got this time where if I'm not open about that and realizing what's going on and being practical about those steps, then my confidence will go down too. Cause it's like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think about me? I'm doing this situation. And so I think that's, again, reiterating that it's important to understand, don't worry what others are thinking. Doesn't mean it's not easy, but again, that goes back to the check-in. If you can continue to build confidence with yourself and realize, like, I know the path I'm on, it doesn't care what anyone else input comes into play. I'm going to honor that and see if it resonates, if it works well, or if it's just completely, not at all in alignment. But that is just important on your own journey of entrepreneurship, of business. You're going to have so many people coming at you telling you got to do this way or that way and this way. Yeah. And it does not mean to not be open to it. There's an importance of that, of being open to it, but also realizing, is it serving in this moment? Does it resonate in this moment? And when you take action, is it actually improving upon your business, life, your personal life, and making sure you always do that check-in.
I love that. Can you share real quick, just, you mentioned that you've got some stuff coming up, and can you share with everybody what that is and kind of what your journey is right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'm planning to do 50K, 25 states this upcoming year, 2021, depending on COVID-19, where I'm going to be traveling and doing a 50K, running a 50K trail. So was planning to do the races. Races right now have been postponed. They're on and off. So self-supported. It's going to be all self-supported as well as minimal crew. And what I'm excited about is just being able to share that journey. So I've been sharing it on social media. Instagram is a great way to connect with me, to go there. That's at RD Weeks, WEKS 50, and then also starting a YouTube channel as well, where it's actually this is gonna be the first time I'm sharing it publicly. The adventure, it's called the 50/50 Adventure, and so that is in a sense going to be the 2 years traveling to 50 states, running a 50K trail in each of those states, and inspiring others to be able to discover their best life through outdoor adventures. And it's that 50/50 of, like, sometimes we're on that edge, on that middle line, so it's like, where are we going to go? It's like, this is hopefully to be able to push them over the edge to say, let me go and do this.
I love that. And I think that is super inspiring. And I will make sure and have the links in the show notes for people to kind of link to. And do you have a website or anything for that? Or are you just going to do it all through social media?
Yeah, so you can also check me out on the website. It's going through a new branding with it. It's all launching. So yeah, this is great. A little sneak peek for those listening.
Surprise!
It'll be launching at the end of October. When it comes to 50/50 Adventure, that's already preliminarily been out there. But the website's rdweeks, WEKS.com, and so that'll be a full rebrand, and you'll be able to click one of the tabs for the 50/50 Adventure as well, and follow along. So I'll be documenting it throughout the journey, have some people helping out with that as well, which I'm excited about, and being able to also just, each day I'll be providing some updates for those that want to follow along.
That's super excited. And I like to check back with people that have this stuff going on. So we'll definitely check back with you and be like, okay, how's it going? How's your legs fell off?
Well, and so, and real quick, so what's been interesting is, like, for me, I always think of, like, it goes back to small wins. Honor that, because for me, I look at, like, 50K, man, like, gosh, like, that's going to be rough. Yeah. But, like, I get in the mindset with my coach. I'm like, all right, it's going to take me 10 hours to walk it. So maybe I get into that. Like, that's doable. I feel confident about that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So, and then the first place, which I'm excited about, that really revved me up of, like, all right, we got this, is Hawaii. So that's the plan, is first spot, January, is to be Hawaii for 2 weeks. We'll be there. And then, depending with the fires going on right now, West Coast was a plan, as well as Southwest. So that was a plan for the next spots, but we'll see, what's happening.
Well, that just shows, the ability to pivot, that's just this, this year has really showed that, but the ability to pivot I feel like has been my whole life, but it's definitely something that, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, maybe I should start running and go to Hawaii. No, I'm just kidding. I don't like running that much.
But the thing is too, it's like, hopefully that sparks, just like if someone, if you had that idea of, like, oh, I want to go do this or that, and knowing that there's a lot of responsibilities, but don't let that first come into your mind.
Exactly.
Just be like, all right, I want to do this. Let me figure out how to make it work, rather than, like, I can't do this. And I have those moments too. We all do. Like, no one is not. If you've never had those moments, man, like, I don't think you're human.
No, personally. I actually think they're lying. That's what I was saying. I was like, you're either in denial or you're lying. It's one of those two, because everybody does. Everybody does.
And the key is to be open about it, and support one another too. It's like, just because someone's doing that, it's like, oh man, like, that's so awesome. That let's see what that results for me. And like, I've been using that a lot too for motivation, see what others are doing and being able to say like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Well, and you could take that same concept, and even if running's not your jam, and it's not my jam. I mean, I mentioned that we're doing, just as a family, doing the 52 hike challenge. And, you know, with all the kids, and one of them's 3 years old, that's a big deal for her tiny little legs. You know what I mean? She's been doing that, and it's been so fun. So, I mean, pick your own thing, pick a goal and kind of stick to it. Just the idea of having that goal. And it can have something to do with your business or have something to do with your personal life or just how you emotionally feel. But, you know, having that, you get those wins. Every week when we get that done, the kids are so excited. And I made a calendar and, you know, we've got it up there. We put a sticker up there and they've been thrilled, you know, completely thrilled. And so, I mean, pick your own thing. It could be swimming. It could be hiking. It could be kayaking. It could be running. It could be walking. You know, pick your own thing.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to get outdoors one way or another. If you can find a way to make that happen, it will just shift your life, I believe, forever. So hopefully that inspires someone to go out there and do it.
So that's what I tell people. I go outside every single day, whether it's, you know, if it's rainy or nasty outside, I'll just sit on my porch. But going outside is a part of my every single day because it makes me feel so much better and it calms me. I do it every single morning. I try to meditate every morning and do yoga every morning. Again, there's might not be your thing. But pick a few things in the morning, and even if it takes you just 5 minutes, take that. It will change the rest of your day, and then it'll change your life. Yeah.
And also the last thing, so I want to share as well, is when you start, there may be those moments where you falter. And honor that. Know that's going to happen. That happened for me, where there's going to be some, perhaps if you're trying to do it every day, that doesn't happen. Just know you're building the strength and the practice to really get to the point where it becomes a must for you each and every day. And once you hit that, you know you've hit it, and it just becomes natural. It becomes just part of your life. And to know that it's okay, that you're going to have those moments of, you know, perhaps falling back, try to keep that as little as possible, but just know that they may come, honor that, but just keep moving forward too. And not beat yourself up.
Yeah. And try to pivot. Cause I know for me, I would, when I first started, I would try to get up before the kids. Well, my kids are like flipping roosters or something. So it's like half the time I'd be like, okay, that's great. I'll get up at 5. I'll get up at 5 every morning. And then all of a sudden my kids start getting up at 5 every morning. I'm like, seriously? So then I'm like, I get up at 4:30. And my kids start getting up at 4:30. I'm like, seriously? So now it's just like, I get up the time that I plan to get up, which is usually between 5 and 6, depends on the day. And if the kids are awake, they know. I get them set on like, mommy's going to go do your yoga practice. They know that's mommy's yoga practice. That's my time. And at the same time, I'm teaching them, because I didn't do a good job of this early on. I'm teaching them that it's important to have self-care, that this is my time.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, I know we can talk about this for hours, but what I will say as well from that is get the family involved. Like get even if, let's say you don't have a family, or, you know, you got, you know, maybe friends or just acquaintances that can become that energy. Talk about it, get it out there, because then that allows you, one, it's accountability, but two, gets more people involved. All of a sudden you're building a relationship. Maybe it's like, if you know, with the kids, it could be like, hey, actually they're going to join in on the meditation now, you know, or and
sometimes they do.
Yeah. And so that just builds the energy. And sometimes we feel like, oh, I don't want to share because like it feels, I don't know what people are going to think. And that's the biggest thing, is like, I don't know what people are think. Just go out there, know that they're going to come from a place of love, especially those that love you. I sometimes forget about that. It's like, oh man, like they love me. They're going to be okay with that. Let me just share it. And
you know what? If they're not, if they're not, who cares? Because a lot of times people will have those reactions because a lot of times it's because they wish they could do it, or, you know, whatever reason may be, that's an internal thing. So, you know, a lot of people are like, well, this person was negative with me. I'm like, forget the negativity. Most of the time, if somebody's projecting negativity, that's their own inside feelings that are coming out towards you. Forget it. You're inspiring them whether you realize it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just, keep at it. So those that need to hear that, just keep going. And pivot. As you say, pivot is key in knowing, okay, how can I switch it where this isn't working? What could I try else?
Exactly. And I love that. And I know that we're kind of short on time today, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But I will have the links to all RD's information into the show notes, and we will check back with you to see how your 50K is going. I'm super excited about Hawaii. Hopefully you take lots of pictures. Yeah. I have never been to Hawaii, and I'm really sad about that.
Yeah, me neither. So I have a few friends out there, but it's going to be the first time, so I'm excited. Yeah.
My husband was in the Navy, so he's been like everywhere. So he's always like, well, that's not as good as you think it is. I'm like, let me decide that. Let me decide.
Yeah.
let me go and be like, well, this isn't as good as I thought. I want to decide that for myself. You know, so. Yeah. So, well, we had just decided to start traveling more this year, and then COVID. So I'm like, seriously?
Yeah. And that's what we do. There's going to be things that you can't control. Don't put your energy towards that and get bogged down with it. Just keep going for what you can control in those areas for your actions, and just, it'll be.
Actions is where it's at, because that's actually how we ended up doing all the hikes. I decided to hike more personally, throughout the week than I was before. And we decided to do it as a family because we can't really travel right now. Yeah. We can go out in the woods. We can hike more. And you'd be surprised the local places. There's a lot of hiking trails I didn't even know existed around me. And I'm like, what? I didn't know this was here. And it's like 10 minutes from my house. I'm like, I didn't know this existed, and All Trails is, I don't know if you have that app, but it's a great app. I don't know if you hike, but All Trails is a great app. It's a great app, and you can find trails near you, and it even will kind of tell you if it's kid friendly, pet friendly, or whatever. And that helps me plan if I'm going by myself, or if the kids are going on that one, helps me plan whether, because the big difference if it's 15 miles and if it's like 3 miles, for the 3-year-old. So yeah, it's great. I mean, it's great. I love that app, and they have the free version, and they also have a paid version too. So it's great. So. All right. Well, I'll let you go ahead and just say your goodbyes. And if you have any takeaways you want to give, then we'll kind of go with that. And then we will check back with you.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate again for the opportunity. And so I will say, if you want to connect and continue the conversation, you can connect with me on social media. The best one for communication, just because I keep that really close knit, is Instagram is going to be the best way. That's RDWeeks50 again. And as you said, the link will be there too. And then also, if you would like to listen to some of the outdoor running journeys for people, outdoor running podcast, that's where I interview other people too about their running journey too, if you're interested in running.
I'm the rage they exclamated. LA Times, I stay on page 6. I'm even your